We are starving to death. For over 60 days, not a single crumb of food or aid has entered Gaza. We have no energy left to fetch water, search for firewood, or even flee from one place to another. Parents now wish for death just to escape the agony of watching their children wither to bone. This is a slow, collective punishment in front of the world's eyes. These are not my words, but words of one of our young contributors, Ahmed Dremly, who is in Gaza right now. As we speak, children literally are dying of starvation. We're seeing images and videos from Gaza today of emaciated children. We hear reports of families eating turtles and horses, eating animal fodder, and even picking grass and leaves because they have nothing left to consume. Local reports say nearly 290,000 of Gaza's children are on the brink of death. And all of this is happening under continuous and relentless Israeli bombardment. And yet, less than a mile away, hundreds of trucks set full of life-saving food and aid blocked from entry by Israel. Here to discuss Israel's campaign of mass slaughter and starvation on Gaza and more is Palestinian political analyst and fellow Gazan Muhammad Shehada. Muhammad Shehada, what else can you tell us about the starvation and famine in Gaza?
Well, it's now reached an unprecedented level. So I was just talking to a colleague in Gaza, a breastfeeding mother, and she was saying that she is regularly passing out. She caught all kinds of diseases from malnutrition, undernourishment, and diseases that she picked up from the food containers that are coming into Gaza itself. Eczema, skin infections, food poisoning, etc. The stuff that Israel leaves to rot at the borders for months and then allows into Gaza when it had completely expired. She also said that basically on the street, in the markets, people are just suddenly collapsing and passing out from starvation, from dehydration and malnourishment. And she recently told me this. She said, Muhammad, I cannot breastfeed anymore. We do not have water. We don't have drinking water. We barely have salty water from the sea. And she was asking for practical advice. She was not being polemic. She said, how do I stay sane when my baby starves to death before my eyes? Hospitals in Gaza are now overflowing with babies and kids, the people that are affected the worst by the famine, the starvation. And it got to an extent where hospitals are rationing medicines and human capacity. So another colleague of mine, her mother needed immediate medical attention. She was turned back. She was told, we are prioritizing children and people wounded by Israeli airstrikes. So she had to watch her mother die before her eyes. I have another friend who's been half paralyzed for months, no medical treatment at all. His mother was hit with shrapnel in her arm. Her bones healed the wrong way, and she hasn't been able to get any surgery. Another friend, he got shrapnel in his eyes that caused blindness. It needed immediate medical attention to solve the problem and allow him to see again. And he's been bedridden now for about 8 months because the hospital where he was scheduled to be operated was raided and attacked in Khan Yunis by the Israeli army on the day of his medical operation. So they were told, leave, the army is coming here. And you got now to a situation where I basically have family and friends living inside the ruins of destroyed buildings. So I have one friend that set up a tent in the Rashad al-Shawa culture center that Israel bombarded so heavily, there's virtually none of it left. The small fragments of a rooftop on top of their heads can collapse at any minute of the day. And I'm telling him, like, you have a child that's 4 years old, you should stay outside of that building. Is it not an immediate risk? His answer is that this is better than the tent, dramatically. I have another friend exactly the same way, staying in the ruins of a bombed building with his family, with his daughter that is about now 3 years old. And it is this endless situation of starvation, terrorization, persistent trauma that is being grubbed every day and cut anew with no end in sight. So one of my friends, he said, his son is having constant seizures. He cannot have any medical intervention to help with this. His son is 4 years old and he's desperate what to do about it. There's no medicine, there are no functional hospitals, and there's no basic food for basic nourishment. the worst aspect of Israel's starvation is the genocidal aspect of it. It's not the collective punishment. It's not the use of food to accomplish political means, which is terrorism. It's not sort of the crime against humanity of weaponizing food or starving people. It is the use of food to cause permanent health complications and damage, particularly with children, to destroy a group in whole or in part. When you have been undernourished or malnourished consistently for now close to 2 years, the impact of it on your body is permanent. Even once you get healthy meals again, even once you get some medical attention, the impact never leaves you. Especially for children, where it causes a lot of stunted growth, it causes all kinds of different complications in the digestive system, in the brain development, etc. So it is just purely genocidal.
And Muhammad, all of this is happening in front of the world's eyes. Everyone is watching this. Everyone knows exactly what is happening in Gaza. Even Donald Trump, he said a few days ago that Gaza needs food. People are starving. Even Donald Trump even acknowledging that. And Israel knows that. Everyone knows that they are starving the population in Gaza. Over 60 days of no food, no water, nothing. Well, what is the Israeli mega plan here? What are they trying to achieve by starving the population in Gaza?
I remember in the early months of the genocide, there was a picture of starving people queuing desperately to get any scraps of food from an empty giant pot of rice. And that picture, it caused a political debate in the Israeli political establishment, in which there was some opposition of saying these pictures are alarming. Not because it's criminal or atrocious or it's illegal or inhumane, but because it would make Israel look bad. So that was the warning made by Israel's culture minister, Mary Regev, or transportation minister at the current moment. But now you're at a point where Israel realized that you can actually starve those people to death. You can get daily floods of footage of kids in ICU units in hospitals on respirators and getting injected with medical fluids to sustain the basic survival, that they've been so starved you can see their skeletal bone structure without any damage to Israel's PR. The EU, when they came out with a statement when Israel banned the food from going into Gaza, despite a clear ceasefire that stipulated so, the EU basically condemned Hamas for collapsing the ceasefire, and they said, expressed concern about Israel banning food. They made a little slightly more strong-worded statement afterwards. It doesn't mean anything. Like, even if they come out every day and they say, we condemn Israel's starvation of Gaza, without any political action afterwards, without any consequences. When you have Kaya Kalas calling Gideon Saar, I think today or yesterday, and having a cozy phone call where she says, I was tough on him and I told him this, you should allow food into Gaza, etc. When you continue business as usual, invite the Israelis to the Association Council in Europe, or invite them to different European capitals, these statements are just empty. They know that it's fraud, it's a sham. The Israeli end game with the famine in Gaza right now is multifaceted. There's number one, the collective punishment, starvation, and divide and rule. So early on in the genocide, you had an Israeli member of Knesset, Tali Gottlieb, from the Likud, coming out and saying, it is good to cause starvation in Gaza. That I'm paraphrasing here, but that was the essence of it. She says, if people in Gaza don't have food, medicine, and water, that would allow us to recruit collaborators. That would allow us to pin Palestinians against one another. There's the other thing with Israel using starvation to debilitate the general Palestinian population, to make it easier for the IDF to invade areas, kill, slaughter, destroy homes, and forcibly expel people. So there's also the element where you saw a couple of Israeli soldiers, it came out yesterday, that were sitting at a train or a bus station, and they were gossiping about their time in Gaza now that they returned from service. One of them said, we used to open food cans and leave it on the side road for Palestinians to bait them. And as soon as they approached, desperately hungry and starving and looking for food, we would empty our machine guns into them and send them flying into the air. And then afterwards he stopped himself and he said, now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds criminal, which perfectly sums up the Israeli mentality at the moment. Do whatever you want, just don't bring it to the world's attention. And they can count perfectly that the mainstream media is making a deliberate effort to disappear Gaza from headlines, to relegate it to the back of the newspapers, to the very bottom.
That's exactly what's happening right now. We see a starvation that happened in Gaza, and the mainstream media here in the West ignores it completely. So, Muhammad, what is the plan for the future? Will Israel keep blocking the entry of food and water to Gaza? Is that going to continue, or is it going to stop at some point?
Basically, Israel will continue the starvation, the famine, because one of its core goals is to empty out the Gaza Strip, to finish off the Gaza question, to tell people that if you want to survive, then leave Gaza, which according to international United Nations memos, they conclude that this is not voluntary migration. This is forced population transfer and expulsion. If you tell people the only way you can survive is by leaving, you are forcing them to leave. You are not giving them a choice. There's the other element now with Israel deciding to spin its famine policy in Gaza, its induced starvation, its engineered societal collapse, with a humanitarian guise. So the IDF, the Israeli army, with Netanyahu just decided to start these, what they call as aid compounds in the very north, in the very south, in Rafah, that would be administered. The area is fully controlled by the Israeli army. The compounds are administered and run by, according to Israel's Ma'arif newspaper, they are run by American mercenaries that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, armed to the teeth. And they would pick and choose who in Gaza is allowed to come and take food and who starves to death. Israel would decide on that. And when they call you up and say, go and get a food package, they make a calorie count of saying, Ahmed needs a box of food of this amount in order for him to barely survive, not to have a proper health, but to barely survive. He needs this amount of calories every day with his family members. We will give him precisely that amount on the calculator to suffice him for a week. The other thing is that once you go to the actual compound, there's no guarantee that you will come out of it again. Because when you go there, it's an area under IDF full control. A starved person told, come here to this trap, to this aid compound, this complex run by mercenaries, supervised by the Israeli army. There's a high % chance of you being kidnapped or killed, murdered, maimed, disappeared. Which is why the United Nations and 20 international organizations objected to this very openly and publicly, and in their own internal memorandum. They make clear that this Israeli plan for aid distribution has nothing to do with aid or humanitarian intervention. It is another phase of weaponizing food to divide and rule, to inflict forced expulsion. These are the words that are used in that memo, to possibly create mass internment, which is the other way of saying concentration camps, which is now perfectly aligned with the vision that Netanyahu just laid out with Smotrich and his cabinet, and said that their vision in Gaza is to squeeze everybody to the south of the Murag corridor. So squeeze everyone in Rafah, that very, very tiny city on the borders with Egypt. Force everybody there to go there, and Israel occupies the entirety of the Gaza Strip and occupies it indefinitely. So it is just like making genocidal intent abundantly clear for the whole world to see. The problem is that the media, the mainstream media, is telling you, don't look there. There are other topics that are more interesting. There's this Katy Perry concert where she did not perform well, or there's this Beyonce concert, or look what Trump said about him becoming the next pope. Anything but look, except for looking famine and genocide in the face in Gaza. It is a deliberate effort. There's no fatigue out there. I meet constantly with civil society representatives, government officials, Palestinians, pro-Palestinians in Europe, in the US, etc. The energy is still at all-time high. People want to see the genocide over. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. But then you look at the landscape with the media, in which there is this deliberate effort to make it feel like Gaza disappeared. There's no Gaza anymore to talk about. It's not a topical priority.
Muhammad Shehada, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.